And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Like I said, we are in a new hour. We have a lot more top headlines left to get to, and there are many. This was the scene today. This is a live picture there outside of the courthouse in Los Angeles. President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, pleading guilty to all 9 tax charges. Well, what does this mean for the trial that was expected to go forward here? Does that mean there will be no trial after this guilty plea? That's a question I have. Putting this tweet up from Fox News, guilty, you see there, Hunter Biden has officially entered a guilty plea on all 9 federal tax charges brought against him by special counsel David Weiss, his attorney said in court. Shocking federal prosecutors. Now, as of about 10 minutes ago, Hunter Biden just released this multi-part statement. I want to read it in full for you, and we have it. So Hunter Biden goes on to say this: I went to trial in Delaware not realizing the anguish it would cause my family, and I will not put them through it again. When it became clear to me that the same prosecutors were focused not on justice, but on dehumanizing me for my actions during my addiction, there was only one path left for me. I will not subject my family to more pain, more invasions of privacy, and needless embarrassment. For all I have put them through over the years, I can spare them this, and so I have decided to plead guilty. Hunter Biden goes on to say, like millions of Americans, I failed to file and pay my taxes on time. For that, I am responsible. As I have stated, addiction is not an excuse, but it is an explanation for some of my failures at issue in this case. When I was addicted, I wasn't thinking about my taxes. I was thinking about surviving. But the jury would never have heard that or know that had I paid every penny of my back taxes, including penalties. I've been clean and sober for more than 5 years now because I've had the love and support of my family. I can never repay them for showing up for me and helping me through my worst moments. But I can protect them from being publicly humiliated for my failures. For anyone now going through this scourge of addiction, please know there is a light at the end of that seemingly endless tunnel. I was where you are now. Don't quit right before the miracle. So that multi-part statement just issued by Hunter Biden, President Biden's son here. What we want to do right now is let you listen into brief comments Hunter Biden's attorney, Abbe Lowell, made outside of the courthouse today. Let's watch.
Guys, I got to do this and get on. So if you're not ready, sorry. Ready? So I have a brief statement to make, and I'm not going to answer any questions. After watching prosecutors exploit his family's pain during the Delaware trial and realizing that they were planning to do it again here in California, Hunter decided to enter his plea to protect those he loves from unnecessary hurt and cruel humiliation. This plea prevents that kind of show trial that would have not provided all the facts or served any real point in justice. He will now move on with us to the sentencing phase while keeping open the options to raise the many clear issues with this case on appeal. There's no doubt this case was an extreme and unusual one for the government to bring. Like millions of Americans, Hunter was late in filing and paying his taxes. Unlike those millions of Americans, he was charged criminally for his failures that occurred during the depths of his addiction to drugs and alcohol, and which he has rectified by paying his overdue taxes in full with interest and penalties, years before he was ever charged. In fact, Hunter actually overpaid his taxes in the year he was charged with tax evasion. Hunter put his family first today, and it was a brave and loving thing for him to do.
Why did he wait till this morning? President took pardon Hunter.
All right, that was Abbe Lowell there outside the courthouse in Los Angeles. Abbe Lowell is Hunter Biden's attorney. Let's bring into the conversation, though, now our friend, former federal prosecutor and legal analyst Nima Rahmani. Nima, good to see you here. You and I were talking offline, I believe, last week that we were gearing up for this. We were going to have you on to cover each and every day, every bit of this trial. So is that the headline here? No trial for Hunter Biden after this guilty plea today, Nima?
That is the headline, Andrew. I'm sitting here in Los Angeles, about a mile away from the courthouse, and we expected fireworks because obviously this case was about Hunter Biden, but it's also about prostitutes and drug addiction and all sorts of very salacious facts. Because at the end of the day, not only did Hunter Biden fail to file tax returns, he wrote off expenses for escorts and illegal narcotics. So that was all going to come out in this case, even more than the Delaware case. But I do have to say the following. I completely disagree with Abbe Lowell. This is why people don't like lawyers, because if Hunter Biden cared about his family, he would have taken that original plea deal, that sweetheart deal. He could have pled guilty to 2 misdemeanors and resolved this case months ago. Instead, he put his family through the embarrassment of the trial in Delaware. He pleaded today as 120 potential jurors were walking in. There is no legal reason for him to do so unless he knows what we all suspect, that the reason he's taking 12 felonies instead of 2 misdemeanors is that Hunter Biden knows that his father, Joe Biden, is going to pardon him probably shortly after the presidential election, Andrew.
Okay, Nima, I got to push back on that because the White House says no pardon or commutation is on the table. You have presented this theory today. I want to put up one of your tweets here. I just want to press you on this even further here. We have the tweet. Nima, you mentioned this. Hunter Biden is reportedly entering an offered plea, and prosecutors were caught off guard. An open plea without a plea agreement is usually not a good deal. Hunter's lawyer is experienced, and Hunter is a lawyer himself. So I'm thinking Hunter already has a pardon lined up. Now, Nima, why do you think this? Why do you, I would say, make the leap? If we're hearing from the White House, if we're hearing from Karine Jean-Pierre, if we're hearing from President Biden himself that they're not even considering that here, but you think it's in the offing. Why?
I think so, because 99% of criminal defendants plead guilty pursuant to a plea agreement. They get something in exchange for that plea agreement. It's charges being dismissed. It's a reduction in the recommended sentence. Rarely, if ever, do defendants plead open. That means pleading guilty to the indictment. That means you have to accept every single charge. All of the allegations is true. You can't pick and choose. Normally, you extract some sort of benefit from prosecutors in exchange for doing so. And it just strikes me as legal malpractice for an experienced lawyer like Abby Lowell to have a diversion deal, a sweetheart deal that House Republicans call it. And it was an amazing deal to walk away from that, to blow that up, to put your client in a position where he's embarrassed in Delaware, is convicted of 3 felonies. Now you're in Los Angeles, is convicted of 9 additional felonies and looking at the very real possibility of prison time unless you have something lined up. And if not, then Hunter Biden should be filing a claim against his lawyers for malpractice, because this was sheer incompetence if they don't have a pardon or a commutation lined up and you walked away from a deal that would have been a slap on the wrist in exchange for this embarrassment in 2 different states.
Yeah, I mean, even to your point, and I was going to ask you this, why, I mean, this is the very definition of last minute, the day jury selection was going to begin in this trial here. To that point, why not yesterday? Why not last week? Why not months ago? Why not right in the wake of the indictment handed down by Special Prosecutor David Weiss here? Why so last minute?
Why so last minute? Because they didn't care what the government offered and they wanted to stick it to them. The defense attorneys in this case wanted David Weiss and the prosecution, the entire Department of Justice, to prepare for a trial, to do all the work, to subpoena all the witnesses, to have everything lined up, and then plead at the last minute because they didn't care what the consequences were. All they wanted was to delay this case. The defense just wanted time because they know the later they plead, the later the sentencing is going to be set out. It usually takes about 3 months for U.S. probation to prepare a pre-sentence report. And guess what? Now the sentence in this case is going to be well after the election in mid December. So for the defense, what was much more important is delaying and to push this case past the general election in November, not necessarily what they could bargain for in terms of time. Because even if they got some counts dismissed, even if the government was recommending a reduced sentence, that doesn't matter when there's the very high likelihood that you're going to be pardoned.
Okay, but when you talk about what this trial was going to look like here, there was news about a month ago that relatives of Hunter Biden, members of the Biden family, his sister-in-law, I believe, Hallie Biden, took a plea of immunity with Weiss in order to testify there and not incriminate herself for whatever she was going to say on the stand. Hunter Biden in that statement was essentially saying and foreclosing all options to air the Biden dirty laundry out there in court in Los Angeles. We're not going to hear any of that, are we?
We're not going to hear any of it, but we heard a lot of it in Delaware.
Yeah.
The laptop and all that evidence came in. Many members of the Hunter Biden family had to testify because that case was about being an addict in possession of a firearm. So the government had to prove the addiction. And Hunter Biden, shockingly, despite admitting it in his own memoir, and there being pictures of him using illegal drugs, tried to argue that he was not addicted at the time that he possessed that weapon. I mean, it was a terrible defense. The jury in Delaware rejected it. I'm sure whatever defense that Hunter Biden's team wanted to put on in this case would similarly be rejected because ultimately he didn't file returns. He wrote off these expenses. For him to argue that he did so because he was an addict would bring in all the evidence of his addiction that came in Delaware and which was similarly rejected there.
But Nima, what about the sentencing phase? I mean, what is he looking at here? If what you say is true and you think there is some type of pardon or commutation on the table, beside all that, what is he looking at as far as the sentencing phase? And where does the judge come into all of this? What role does the judge have in accepting this guilty plea and in the sentencing here? Is it all up to the judge now?
It really is all up to the judge. Now, there's going to be an advisory guideline sentence. And because we're talking about $1.5 million, that advisory sentence is going to be jail time. Now, there is some evidence of mitigation. Hunter Biden did finally accept responsibility and plead guilty. He, of course, paid the taxes back. The addiction is a factor the judge can consider. But I know Mark Scarzi. I used to work with him. He doesn't have a criminal background. He's a recent appointee of Donald Trump. So it's not like there's years of him being on the bench. But the question is, I mean, Hunter Biden, as the son of a president, is still entitled to Secret Service protection. Is Judge Scarzi really going to sentence him to prison with the Secret Service there? We've talked about Donald Trump and it being a logistical nightmare. The same problems apply to Hunter Biden. So what's really going to happen if Joe Biden doesn't pardon Hunter and the judge wants to impose some period of incarceration? Does he do house arrest to avoid this issue entirely? Because sending him to the Bureau of Prisons with the Secret Service is obviously uncharted legal waters and something that's going to be highly problematic.
One last point, Nima. I mean, you heard there in Hunter Biden's statement and from Abbe Lowell, they characterize this and liken this to the cases of millions of Americans. The fact that they said and they claim millions of Americans do this very thing, forget to file to pay their taxes. The charges at hand were Hunter Biden did not file to pay upwards of $2 million worth of taxes over a period of time here. Is that necessarily true for millions of Americans that they forget to file their taxes to the tune of almost $2 million? What did you make of that claim?
Yeah, it was laughable. I don't think it's true to the extent that people that make as much money as Hunter Biden don't pay their taxes. Now, I'm sure there are many people that do not file returns. I'm guessing they make significantly less. But the reason I'm laughing is it's not a legal defense. That's like me being pulled over, Andrew, for speeding. And I say, well, there's all these other people, officer, who are speeding. Why aren't you pulling them over? Not a legal defense. The same reason why all of Hunter Biden's pretrial motions, they were rejected by Judge Scarzi. He tried to argue that, well, I paid my taxes in subsequent years or in other years. Again, it's not relevant to the charges in the case. Did you not file in this particular year? Did you put deductions that were unlawful in this particular year? That's all that matters. That's the only issue for the jury to decide. So Again, no real legal defense in this case, and the writing was on the wall here for quite some time.
But another point of maybe cognitive dissonance here, Hunter Biden did not want to put his family through this yet again. You know, the pain and the embarrassment, he said humiliation of what he has gone through with regard to his own battles with drug addiction. But at the very same time, you flip that around, and he was using his drug addiction to excuse or justify why he forgot to file his taxes here. I just thought that was interesting.
It was very interesting. And again, if you take Hunter Biden at his word, and I believe that he didn't want to put his family through the embarrassment again, but what you would do, which any defense lawyer would do, is if there's no defense in the case, you negotiate some sort of deal. The vast majority of criminal defendants plead guilty. You extract something from the government. You have experienced lawyers. You start that negotiation process early. You don't sandbag them and spring this upon them in open court on the day of trial. There has to be some political or tactical reason why they're doing so.
All right, Nima Rahmani there live for us in Los Angeles where this all went down today. Nima, can't thank you enough. Talk soon.